Hello, my name is Kathy Duffy. I'm a Master Gardener volunteer at the Morrow County Extension Office in Mount Gilead, Ohio. The Master Gardener volunteers are empowered to educate others with timely research-based gardening information. So today I'd like to talk to you about gardening with pets. I love my pets, and I love my garden, and I like having both of them together. We enjoy doing things out here. This is not my pet, my dog, or my cat, or me, in fact, but we all like to have our animals with us when we're gardening. The reality is that sometimes there are problems. Your dog gets into your plants, your cats crush your flower pots, your animals eat your houseplants. So we're going to talk about something called petscaping. Petscaping is a gardening approach with pets in mind. The idea being to keep pets safe and to keep plants safe. The first step is to think about your garden. Is your garden a flower garden, a vegetable garden, or a combination of both? Is the appearance of your garden important to you? Does it have to be pristine? Do you keep it well manicured, or do you have a more casual approach? It's important to think about that because pets do have an impact on our gardens. You also want to think about your pet. What does your pet like to do? They're all different. Individual cats are different. Some of them like catnip, some of them hate it. Dogs are different. Different breeds have different characteristics. Does your dog like to run around like crazy, dig holes in the garden, run through your rhododendrons, pull up all your annuals? Or does your dog like to just lie in the sun or in the shade and relax? The first thing you need to consider with dogs and cats and any pet in your garden is that there are some dangers. There's toxic plants, there are fertilizers and chemicals that they can get around, there's mulch and compost, and even those can be problematic. Plants have defenses. Plants can't run away, plants can't fly away, but they have defenses. They have bark, they have thorns, they have spines, and many plants contain substances which can injure or even kill animals that consume them, or sometimes even touch them. It's important that you protect your animals from these dangers. Toxic plants are far more common than we think. Even our normal garden plants can be toxic to dogs and cats. It's important to know what you have growing both inside and out and which are dangerous to your pets. Here are a couple of sources online that can provide you with long lists of potentially dangerous plants. A better idea, I think, is to talk to your veterinarian or your local county extension agent to determine what things are growing in your area and how they may be dangerous or not to your pets. I'm not an expert on the toxicity of plants, but I have read some factors. There are many factors that determine whether or not a plant is dangerous to your animal and how much of a danger it is. One of these is the behavior of your pet in your garden. Does your pet want to eat your plants or not? Also important to know the plant part that may be a problem. Some plants have poisonous leaves. Others have poisonous seeds. It's important to know this. The chemical agent, how serious the particular poison is important to know. It's also important to know the particular animal involved, because all things are not poisonous to cats and dogs equally. Some plants are dangerous to cattle and horses, but not necessarily to cats and dogs, and the reverse can also be true. The age of your animal is also important, because young puppies, young kittens tend to be interested in new things, and sometimes they will chew on plants just because they're there. Be sure that you consider the health and nutrition of your animal too. Illnesses can make toxicity in plants more serious. Also, the amount of the plant that's consumed is important, because the larger the amount, of course, the greater the problem. Also important is the how long the plant is going to stay in your pet before it's eliminated. Here's an example. Lots of us plant daffodils because we want to avoid a squirrel problem. Squirrels hesitate to dig up daffodils. Uh, well, the flowers of daffodils contain a chemical that can trigger vomiting. The bulbs are also a problem. Bulbs are a problem for digging animals too, because uh, dogs who dig can dig up the bulb plant and then carry around their treasure and chomp on it. And that bulb can cause problems with vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, and respiratory depression, as well as heart problems. Here's another example, lilies. If your cat is eating your amaryllis, then you need to be calling your vet right away. Amaryllis consumption can cause complete kidney failure within 36 to 42 hours. Anyway, it's important to know what your plants are and what your risks are. Houseplants can be a problem, especially for cats, because they like to play with them and chew on them. Shrubs and trees are also a potential problem if your animal is interested in eating parts of them. Vegetables are not always safe either. Onions are a problem. Your pet should not be eating tomato leaves or unripe tomatoes. Rhubarb leaves and green stalks, of course, are poisonous and should not be consumed by you or your pets. Most herbs, ripe fruit, green beans, and such, and berries are safe. Be sure you consider where you're storing your garden chemicals. It's very important that they be kept safe from your pets. Blood meal and bone meal seem like treats to pets. And I have personally experienced what happens when a dog eats a whole bag of blood meal. It's not pleasant. Herbicides and pesticides are potentially dangerous to humans and pets. Be sure you read the label. The label tells you what to do. The label is the law. And when you apply these materials to your lawn and garden, be sure you follow the instructions as far as keeping pets and people away from the area as long as is required. Be sure storage of chemicals is secure. You don't want your animals rooting around in your shelf of chemicals. Mulch is a wonderful thing for the garden. It helps keep weeds down and keeps the soil moist, and it looks nice. However, let's avoid using cocoa bean shell mulch, because that's chocolate, and chocolate is not good for dogs. Size matters too. Large pieces of mulch can be a choking hazard for those kinds of animals that hold things in their mouth. using the mulch from the bag of mulch that you bought at the store last fall uh, in your garden this spring can be a problem because it's had time in that bag to mold. Compost is a wonderful thing, and composting is great for the environment, and having finished compost you can put in your yard is a really wonderful uh, benefit. But compost bins are not areas that should have access by your pets. Uh, Dogs and cats should not be allowed to play in compost or to dig around in compost because they can find things to eat that are not good for them and may use the compost bin as a potty area. Be sure you keep your compost bin secure from your animals. Fleas, ticks, and mosquitoes can be a problem for pets in the yard. You can get topical flea materials from your vet to keep your animal safe from fleas, to keep ticks at bay, keep the lawn mowed so the grass is not so tall and provides places for ticks to hide. For mosquitoes, keep standing water emptied, including food and pet bowls. They need to be emptied every day. So now we're going to talk about keeping your plants safe from your pets. I love having my dogs in the yard. I love having my cats around, but they can be a problem. So sometimes I need to control their access to my garden. One way to do this would be to have a separate area for dogs and a separate area for plants. Everybody can't do this. Uh, and if you do it, make sure it's not a plant jail or a dog jail. Uh, make sure that it looks nice and that there's enough room for plants and enough room for your pet. One recommendation that I read on the internet was to use concentrated, densely planted areas in your garden and then surround these with areas that you allow your pet to be in, such as grass. When you're starting your garden, it's best to go big. If you go big by choosing mature starters rather than tiny little plants, there's less chance of them being sat on and killed by your pet. Established plants is hardier and are less likely to be damaged by a nibble here and there. So if you have the budget for it, go big. For example, you can get an entire flat of tiny little geraniums, or you can get bigger uh, pots of geraniums. And if you can afford it, the bigger ones are a better choice. Fences, of course, are also good for separating dogs and cats from garden plants, both the vegetable garden and the flower garden. But be sure your fence is adequate for the purpose, and be sure your fence is not the only thing you are relying on to keep things secure. You need to be involved in supervising your pet when your pet is around your plants, or in fact, is around other animals that it may harm in your garden. If you have a perimeter fence, one hint is to leave the area right next to the fence, maybe a foot or so that there's a clear area for your dog to run around and do their perimeter gardening that a lot of them like to do. If you have plants planted in that area, they're really likely to be knocked around by the dog running by. Borders are great. Rock borders, little tiny fences, those are all good. They don't necessarily prevent your animal from getting in, but they, combined with training especially, they can indicate to your animal that that area is off limits. Paths are good too. Human beings, like all animals, we like to follow paths, and so do our pets. But be sure your pets, the material in your pet paths, is not a material that's going to get terribly hot and burn their little feet in the summer. Raised beds are a good idea. They also indicate the areas that are off limits to pets. They're not foolproof, of course, as indicated by this example on the right, where the dog saw and helped himself to the little newly planted lettuces, even though they were in a raised bed. So it's not foolproof. Container gardening is a wonderful way to separate your animals from your plants. Lots of containers, all sorts of sizes, and they allow you to successfully grow a lot of plants that you couldn't safely or securely grow in your yard. Getting your plants higher or using hanging baskets is a good way to keep your plants separated from your pets. Here's another alternative, barriers, I think I'd call this. Here, somebody has used plastic forks and plastic spoons to try to keep the cat from entering the raised bed here. Cats are a problem with houseplants. They like to get in and mess around with them. If you look on the internet, you will see many, many, many ideas of way to keep cats out of houseplants. It's a problem because cats can climb, and because they really like to play with the plant or with the soil around the plant. Here are some other ways that people have tried to keep their cats out of their plants. And you can even go as far as having little jails for your plants or putting down those little nasty spikes in the yard. There are also chemicals that you can buy to use in your garden. Those that I know about are only marginally, if at all, effective. As I mentioned previously, houseplants and cats are a problem. Many common houseplants are poisonous to cats, so cats really shouldn't be eating houseplants. Uh, you might try using wheatgrass or catnip to distract your cat from your houseplants. If possible, just keep them separated. A nice idea in your yard to save your plants from your animals is to give your animals something else to do. Uh, a busy animal is not going to be messing around in your plants. Or as I used to say, a tired puppy is a good puppy. Exercise and play are fun for you and provide your animals with some distraction that will keep them away to some extent from your plants. Here are some examples of play yards for dogs, but yours doesn't have to be that elaborate. Just throwing around a ball or interacting with your animal is great. Here is also an example of a tunnel for amusing cats in the house. Obedience is a great option. Obedience play is play for your dog, and you can train your dog outside or in your house. You can train your dog to leave your plants alone or to leave certain areas alone. I also have heard that you can train cats. I've not personally experienced this myself. In my case, the cats have trained me. But obedience training for dogs is a wonderful thing to pursue, especially if your dog is going to be with you, both outside and inside. Digging. Dogs like to dig. Most dogs like to dig. And if your dog likes to dig, you're going to have a hard time getting them not to dig. So a better idea is to pick a spot where they're going to be allowed to dig, either a spot in your yard or a special dogging pit that you have dug or erected. It's important also to provide shade and shelter. Your dog or your cat is going to want to hang out and rest. They need a nice, shady, safe place to do that. That's not too hot in the summer and not too cold in the winter if they're in fact out in the winter. Drinking water. Don't expect your dog or cat to drink water from your pond. They need to have clean drinking water. The water needs to be changed every day. Otherwise, you are inviting illness for your pets. Potty area. To animals, everywhere is a potty area. However, they can learn certain areas to go into, or you can build a special area just for that purpose and train your animal to use just that area. That's all for the hints today. If you have additional comments, please direct them to the OSU Extension, Morrow County, and I have the